Welcome to
Hello,
teabrews&dataviews.
episode 5.
Or
Super
4.
exciting. Or 4, one of the two.
Yeah.
I'm drinking some Earl Grey tea. What about you, Lovey?
I got some green tea, some green jasmine tea here. Um, we covered the tea part. Let's go to the data view part.
Yeah, let's do some show and tell. You go first.
Okay. So quick thing. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
All right. Cool. So I'm gonna show this thing in here. They're called. There's a few types of graphs actually, and the thing I want to show is highlights this thing called dynamic linking, right? And these three graphs that I have, they're really cool because like one, obviously if I click in one graph, it highlights things in the other graphs as well. But I like this type of graph because it's a combination of using this hierarchical cluster and making a parallel plot in here. So let me explain this data set real quick. This data set is a bunch of cars and like the models that they have and some attributes about those cars like city mileage, horsepower, fuel tank capacity, and so on. But the cool thing is there's this thing in here called clustering in Jump, which basically allows you to make groups of cars or whatever you want based on certain variables. So when I made this cluster right here, I basically made a cluster on I think like fuel tank capacity. Oh yeah, right here, city mileage, horsepower, fuel tank capacity, passenger capacity, and weight. And then the cool thing was like it just made these groups in here that shows values that have similar trends. So for example, this group that's in blue, these are cars that have low city mileage, like mid horsepower, mid fuel tank capacity, and kind of a high weight. Versus if I go to a car situation like this, these have very low mileage, um, have a high passenger capacity. And if you kind of like zoom in on one of these cars right here, we can kind of see what type of car it is. That's actually going to be a van, and that makes sense because vans take up a lot of space, and they can carry a lot of people.
Yeah, that's what they're for.
That's exactly what they're
That
for.
makes sense.
So,
Wait, so if you go back to the clustering thing, how many clusters did it find out of those 93 rows?
you can make a few of them. Like you can you can specify how many clusters you want. So if I was to go in here and if I go to like analyze, oh let me move this invisible control out of the way. If I go to like analyze and go to clustering and then hierarchical clustering, first thing I would do is I would tell it what do I want to cluster it by. I would say okay, let me cluster it by city mileage, horsepower, fuel tank capacity, passenger capacity, and weight. And I drop that in here, right? And when right now the amount of groups that I make is dependent on the position of like this little diamond right there. So just to make it easier to see, I'm gonna do color clusters, and you can see I have a bunch of clusters right here. If I drag this all the way over here, I have one cluster, two cluster, three cluster. So it kind of depends on like where you find the usefulness, and most cases the usefulness comes around like 4 to 5 clusters where you can kind of find some distinction between groups. So like
Yeah, that's
these
pretty awesome.
so like these are
And
the clusters right here that it made for us in that case.
And is there a way to like export those clusters as a column so like you could include it in your analysis,
That probably is.
like in a graph?
I think it's more clusters, no? Uh,
Or is it save clusters maybe at the bottom or like
Maybe
middle?
that seems like the right answer right there, Clovis.
Yeah,
Amazing that
let's
you
click
knew
on
that.
it.
Yeah, so now I have cluster
I
one.
set myself up.
So now we got all the clusters here, right? And if you wanted to compare like the different trends between them, I could just go to that cluster column right there, and drop it in there, and let's look at some things in here. So city mileage, I can see, okay, I guess this cluster of the low city mileage ones right here, and then I could probably use this column switcher to kind of switch this guy out with some other things right here and see where the other trends are. This,
Yeah, there.
this graph is like okay, but I feel like there's a better way to kind of visualize all five of these variables at once, and that's where like, that parallel plot is very helpful. So if I go to this graph builder, I can just take those five values those five variables I care about, drop them all in the X here, and then go to parallel plot, and I can see them better this way. And this way I can interact with that cluster analysis I did as well. So it was right here, and then I kind of want this one as well. Let me just do show all, so it's easier that way. And this way, I can grab a cluster and I can see, how that group is organized.
Like
So
that path that goes.
yeah, yeah. And so this is kind of cool because like you can do this for like any type of variables that you have. This is a cool way of like making the groups and then visualizing the groups.
I like it. I like it a lot. I like how dynamic it is. And like in that one graph, you have what, like 5 different variables, and you're including the clusters via coloring. So it's a pretty comprehensive and scalable graph.
Yeah.
Great
This,
use cases.
this is actually an interesting one. What kind of cars do you think this is? It's low city mileage. It has very high horsepower and kind of low passenger capacity. What kind of cars do you think those are?
So low city mileage, low passenger capacity.
And high
Like,
horsepower.
I'm not a car person, man. Like, I guess like a convertible, um, two-seater, old school car. Yeah, what do we have there?
So it's like
Like a Corvette,
yeah. So there's a few sporty cars, like
sporty cars.
cars that are I guess meant to go fast, or like kind of like bigger mid-sized cars right here.
Wow, those city mileages are pretty awful. Um, like under 20 for most of them.
Yeah, this was also 1993, and maybe they didn't hit like expensive
Yeah,
oil yet.
they've gotten better. Yeah, I guess that one probably doesn't have any like hybrids or anything in it,
No,
right?
not in this data set. All right, so yeah, that's my data set. What do you got, Clovis?
Okay, so I'll go ahead and share my screen. So I went like a completely different route where, every once in a while you might not have, tabular numeric data. You might be dealing with unstructured text data. So like reviews, like in this example, we're looking at chips that have different flavors.
Mm-hmm.
We have reviews for all those flavors as well as a star rating. So something I like to leverage is going to be in the Explorer platform, where you're able to add these word clouds, see which words pop up the most frequently, and you could color it based off another column, such as star rating. So if I'm looking here, I see the words that are associated with, high value stars. Good ratings would be like barbecue, greasy, crunch. Those that have less favorable reviews would be lemon and dill, which makes sense. That doesn't sound like a good chip combo. And
No.
those that are neutral is salt. It looks like salt probably shows up
Also, I guess like organic,
everywhere.
rigid.
Yeah, ridged and organic. And I could have done a better text analysis, remove some words like tasty or name or last, things that don't really add value. But I just did this real quick.
What if you wanted
Um,
to highlight into like specific star ratings? Like what are the most common words for like the highest ratings, like ratings 4 and 5?
Yeah, so that, what I would do is I would add a local data filter, if I just wanted to do it all within one window and not have to like restart my analysis and create these subsets and filtering. But from here, locally, without doing anything to my main table, I could pick star rating and I could see, okay, you said 4 and 5, was that
Yeah.
right? Select those two. And then see, barbecue, crunchy, thick.
It seems like barbecue
Um,
chips are just the default good chip.
Yeah, I guess so. Potato, baked potato from North Carolina, also. Again, some of these words might not add um, much value, so you could always select a word that's not adding much here. Like, I don't know,
Heard of wickedly?
maybe like mouth. Mouth isn't really, or hooked isn't adding much. I could always right click those and make them a stop word and essentially remove it from the analysis if necessary.
I also saw on the table you have like gender there for like male and female. I'm curious, is there like a difference in what they think is different for like a high rated chips?
Yeah. So, with the local data filter, I could add combinations here. So I could, if I'm interested in 4 and 5 and I do the and add gender here. And if we look at female, I'm seeing balsamic is one that is now popping up. Savory. Lemon is interesting because overall lemon wasn't doing too well, but here it's doing okay.
Yeah.
Well, and again, a small subset. It's the bigger words are the ones that appear the most frequently in this situation. But let's look at male. Um,
It's just
male is
barbecue.
just keep it
Barbecue,
barbecue,
perfect salt.
salt, yeah. Maybe the word zesty here is popping up in this situation.
That's
So
cool.
again, it's not like if you want to do a better, more in-depth analysis, we do have features here like term selection or sentiment analysis. But this here is just purely visual, no statistics behind it. But it's a nice feature that not a lot of people know about.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So that's why I wanted to show it off.
All right. Well, I think that's a quick update for episode 4.5 for us.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, one of the two, 4 or 5.
Yeah. All
And
right.
with that, I'll give you a cheers on tea and talk to you soon.
All right. Cheers, Clovis. I'll see you there soon.